The Apollo missions was a series of missions which all was a part of the Apollo program, or Project Apollo. The program was created as the third program for human spaceflight in the USA. Project Apollo started in 1961 and continued until 1975. In this time span, NASA carried out 17 Apollo missions. In several of these missions, humans landed on the Moon.
The first Apollo mission was the Apollo 1, which ended up as a total disaster. On January 27, 1967, under a test at the Cape Kennedy Air Force Station, a cabin fire started, which killed the entire crew, including Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. The 24th of April the same year, NASA retired the mission. After the disaster, the NASA flight director, Eugene F. Kranz, held a speech which became an important part of the future Apollo missions. In his speech, he said the following words: "From this day forward, flight control will be known by two words: tough and competent. Tough means we are forever accountable for what we do and what we fail to do. We will never again compromise our responsibilities. Every time we walk into the mission control, we will know what we stand for. Competent means we will never take anything for granted. We will never be found short in our knowledge and our skills. Mission control will be perfect. When you leave this meeting today, you will go to your office and the first thing you will do there is to write tough and competent on your blackboards. It will never be erased. Each day when you enter the room, these words will remind you of the price paid by Grissom, White, and Chaffee. These words are the price of admission to the ranks of mission control." The two following missions, Apollo 2 and Apollo 3, got cancelled because they were supposed to use knowledge and technology from the Apollo 1. Therefore, the next Apollo mission was the Apollo 4, which should test the Saturn V rockets. The first manned Apollo mission was the Apollo 7, which lifted the former backup pilots from the Apollo 1 mission into the space. The Apollo 7 mission did not include a lunar module. The Apollo 10 mission was the first Apollo mission to send a lunar module in an orbit around the Moon.
The Apollo 11 mission was the most famous of all the Apollo missions. It was carried out on July 16, 1969, and its primary objective was to complete the national goal set by President John F. Kennedy, to perform a crewed landing on the Moon and return to Earth. The Saturn V rocket used during the mission carried Command Module pilot Michael Collins, Lunar Module pilot Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Commander Neil Armstrong, who became the first man to set foot on the Moon.
For man, one giant leap for mankind.
The mission was a giant national event, being transmitted on TV. Everyone and their grandma watched it. The mission was a complete success, and America declared themselves winners of the space race, having been the first nation to land on the Moon and return.
After the Apollo 11 mission, NASA had 6 other missions with different objectives. The first one after Apollo 11 was Apollo 12. Apollo 11 landed far from where originally intended, and the goal of Apollo 12 was to make a precise landing. Also, the Apollo 12 was the first mission to bring a color camera.
Apollo 13 was another moon landing mission from Project Apollo. It was the third of its kind and it lasted 6 days. The reason why the mission was so short is because of an explosion located in the service module aboard the spacecraft. It was an oxygen tanker which exploded. The explosion resulted in limited power, loss of cabin heat, shortage of potable water, and a broken carbon dioxide removal system. The broken carbon dioxide removal system was vital for the crew which meant that they had to repair it during the flight. When the explosion occurred, the mission was aborted, but the spacecraft was too far away to just turn around and return to Earth. Instead, they had to go to the Moon and then use the Moon to turn around towards Earth. At the same time, the carbon dioxide removal system was damaged and needed repairing immediately. This was a huge problem because the crew didn't have the right tools for the reparation. But somehow the people at NASA down on Earth managed to find a solution with the stuff available to the crew. The crew landed safely on Earth on April 17, 1970, which was 6 days after the launch.
After Apollo 13, which almost ended up as a disaster, Apollo 14 adopted Apollo 13's mission, which was to explore the cone crater on the Moon. Also, the head pilot, Alan Shepard, smuggled a golf club and 2 golf balls into the spacecraft and made a shot on the Moon, which flew hundreds of meters. The Apollo 16 mission was the first mission to land on the mountains of the Moon. On the Apollo 16 mission, the moon car made a new speed record of 17.7 kilometers per hour. The last of the Apollo missions was the Apollo 17, which marked the end of one of the greatest space programs ever. On the Apollo 17 mission was the geologist Harrison Schmitt.
During the Apollo program, they used the Saturn V rocket. It consists of 3 booster stages, a lunar module for landing on the Moon, and the Apollo spacecraft itself carrying the crew. The first stage was the largest, having to accelerate the entire 2.95 kiloton rocket from the launch pad and until it reached a height of 67 kilometers. The first stage used 0.77 million liters of kerosene fuel to generate the 33 million newtons of thrust required to lift the rocket. Besides that, the rocket carried 1.24 million liters of liquid hydrogen for the later stages and 1.6 million liters of liquid oxygen. The entire rocket is discarded during the mission, with the exception of the spacecraft itself, which returns with the astronauts. This made the Saturn V quite expensive, coming in at a cost of what was then $185 million per launch. This is the equivalent of 1.16 billion US dollars today. The Saturn V was also carrying an emergency rocket on top. In case of malfunction during launch, the escape rocket would carry the command module with the crew away from the rocket. To this day, the Saturn V remains the tallest, heaviest, and most powerful rocket ever used.
Project Apollo was a very successful program. It had a big influence on the future of space exploration. After Apollo, NASA went on to work together with other space agencies, which resulted in the creation of the International Space Station. It wasn't just a victory for USA in terms of winning the space race, it was a major contribution to the future of space exploration.